Uh-huh.
Hello.
Greetings to everyone.
Greetings.
Sorry, it's late starting. Greetings. Hello.
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 Yeah. Right. Welcome. So there's some other people expected, but we'll make a start. I'll just do the usual kind of introductory thing for everyone and welcome people. So we're the monthly meeting of the World Intellectual Forum, which is a body created in India in 2017. I was at the launch meeting. I'm on the international committee. And then we exist to try and foster dialogue between peoples. You know, intellectuals, I think, have a duty in this current world crisis. We're facing many critical challenges. And we're just about to launch the COP26 conference in Glasgow, near where I lived for 7 years. And you know, one of the problems is climate change, global warming, and that is something that we might want to address later. It's a huge issue, you know. Also, there are conflicts, there are wars going on still in today's age in different parts of the world. We see continual war in Yemen. We've seen fighting break out in the Caucasus region, which we'll be talking about later. And, you know, there's instability on the China-India border up in the Himalayas even in the last few months. So, I mean, we're living through a really difficult time. So what can we as intellectuals do? I think we have to stay calm. I hope we're going to have a talk by a neuroscientist who's going to be talking about the kind of physiology of peace internally. We need to cultivate that. And then, yeah, so, you know, there's a lot of huge issues, and global poverty remains a constant problem. The world, you know, vast numbers of the world live in poverty, but the military industrial complex can always afford to bomb, you know, recalcitrant countries. I listened to an extremely interesting talk by Noam Chomsky, which was recorded only last week, about all this, and I'm hoping that we can get him to speak at one of these meetings. He deserves to be part of the World Intellectual Forum, an important man. So, and since we last met, there's been a very important meeting in Barcelona of the International Peace Bureau, which I attended on Zoom. We're joined by a colleague, I think, from possibly Iraq, or who was at that meeting. I've met quite a few interesting new people through that, peace activists from different parts of the world. We all came together. So anyway, you know, welcome to everyone. I think let's just go into our first speaker. I think we'll do introductions, you know, when our speaker's had his go, and then we'll have questions. And when it's your question, we'll you know, you can introduce yourselves then. I think otherwise it'll take too long. Okay. So I'd like to ask Sean English, who's been joining us faithfully every month. He is from Ireland, and he's the coordinator of the World Intellectual Forum in Ireland, the whole of Ireland, North and South. We've worked together on creating a Truth and Reconciliation Commission for Britain and Ireland. And Sean is an academic expert in peace studies. And I think he's going to talk to us about peace studies, you know, from an Irish perspective, how that conflict can help hopefully send a signal of light around the world. So welcome, Sean, over to you.
Oh, thanks very much, Thomas. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can all hear you, I think. Yeah.
Okay, well, listen, greetings to everyone from different corners of the planet. And at this critical time, as Thomas has mentioned, the meeting in Glasgow could decide our futures more than any violent conflict. And one of the elephants in the room, or one of the things that are missed, that seems to be missing in Glasgow, according to the peace movement, is the war industry. The military are not being mentioned at all in the COP-out meeting in Glasgow. And I just wanted to say that my background, as Thomas said, is in peace studies, in the study of peace going back since the 1980s. And just what I want to do was very briefly do a retrospective on the contribution of peace studies to the reduction in violence, if there has been a contribution made by peace studies. And I got to know Thomas back in the 1980s. We were trying to, different parts of the world, we were trying to establish peace studies as a legitimate area of studies at university level, at third level. And there's always problems when you're trying to introduce a new subject. Well, it wasn't really a new subject, but it was, from an academic point of view, a new subject into universities or into departments or into, there's a lot of jealousies, a lot of restrictions. So it was quite a hard struggle to establish a legitimate area of peace studies as an academic, as a strong academic subject. But it was established, and it has been thriving in many ways. Now, a lot of the energy in the original movement may have changed a little bit, and I just wanted to outline some of the things that so I just want to start with a statement that we now live in an age of unprecedented peace. There's no other age in the history of human society has been so peaceful. Now, this is kind of counterproductive, and this statement is from Professor Hinsley. I think it's before Steven Pinker brought out his famous book. I don't know if people know that one, The Better Angels of Our Nature, which he's saying explains in 500 pages why we're much more peaceful now than we have been ever. And there has been a lot of people criticizing that work, and rightly so. I think I think his background was psychology, but anyway, he became quite, that book became, in the last few years, was quite famous. It's been read by a lot of people. But just on the peace studies end of it, one of the issues in peace studies from the very beginning, and it's still there, is what are we studying in peace studies? And the best analogy for people who aren't involved in it is that it's like the study of medicine. There's two different approaches. You either study disease or you study health. And in peace studies, you study conflict, or you actually study peace. Now, you can't study one without the other, I assume. In medicine, you know, if you're studying disease, you are studying health as well, sort of. But if in your academic subject something dominates, and in Western medicine, disease has dominated health, all the effort is in, and rightly so to a certain extent, in looking at disease rather than looking at health. The health part of Western medicine is very minor relation to the major part, which is surgery and all that sort of the medicine. So in peace studies, the very same kind of development happened. Conflict is a much easier thing to study than peace. There's no question about that. If you're out as a United Nations peacekeeper in the Lebanon, and this is, I got this example from one of the Irish soldiers who was out there for 20 years on and off. He said, if you're there and you're doing your job as a peacekeeper, nobody is getting killed because you're separating the people, you're keeping the peace, people are going to school, the children are going to school. So nobody reports the peace is working. But if 5 people are killed in a bomb, that's reported. But you could be there for 2 years holding the peace, keeping the peace, and it's never reported. So that's part of the problem in media, and much more in social media now. The negative things, when somebody gets killed, it's reported. So maybe Steven Pinker is right that it doesn't seem like we're living in a peaceful age. But we are, to a certain extent, certainly in countries like in areas like Europe. The relationships between adults and children, we've established a very peaceful, much more peaceful and less exploitive relationship in that area. The relationship between men and women, again, it's still up in the air, but it's really changed fundamentally, and it is changing. The relationship between people who work and people who they work for as well, all those relationships seem to be getting better, which is very positive. in a lot of ways. But then, I mean, there is a lot of negativities as well. There's a book there recently I read. It's called, the title of it was War, and the subtitle was America's Favorite Pastime. And I love that sort of the image. It's a favorite pastime. It's a favorite occupation. It's a favorite, a lot of things, but it's not only American. The problem is, I would subtitle that book, War, Humanity's Favorite Pastime, because everybody has been at it. Every culture has fought wars, has failed to address the question of aggression, of human individual aggression. Religions have tried, and most of the major world religions have great traditions in the concept of peace, in the promotion of peace, but not from a practical point of view, more from a theory point of view. They apply, the principles are very good, but in practice, it doesn't seem to work. So really what happens in peace studies, I don't want to do this very, very long. We know peace has been recognized from the time of the Greeks or other cultures as a valuable concept, but quite modern. The first Nobel Peace Prize, 1901, but just before that, there was the first conferences. It was called the Hague Conference of International Peace. It was the first time countries came together in relation to war in particular. Before the war started, the Tsar of Russia called this meeting to get the nations to come together to talk about peace before, not as a peace treaty at the end of a war, because all wars end in peace. And from a peace studies point of view, the peace treaties is as important as the war itself. So in 1899, the advanced countries, I'd say, countries of Europe came together at a conference, and we had the peace movement organized a conference in 1999 in The Hague to recreate this movement, this first conference on peace, how to establish peace before a conflict starts. It didn't work, of course, but I mean, it was the forerunner of the League of Nations or some of those more later efforts to get countries together in relation to war. I'm talking broader than aggression and violence and other areas. So there has been, a knowledge that peace needs to be studied. So the foundations of peace studies goes back to early part of the 20th century, when somebody there is a few different ideas on it. Lewis Fry Richardson, he was an English Quaker, who said science is a very dynamic area of study, and it's producing an awful lot of good results. Science is very strong in results. So can we apply science to peace? So Lewis Fry Richardson said it's very hard to do that if you know facts. So we have very little facts on the study of peace. So he started compiling information on peace and all sorts of. The book he published, the book that was published from Lewis Fry Richardson was called The Statistics of Deadly Quarrels. And he looked at all sorts of deadly quarrels, both from domestic right up to international. And he compiled information. And that was kind of the first time we had statistical information on conflict that could be applied to a scientific analysis of peace and war. So, I mean, that was a very significant breakthrough. So a lot of the peace studies later on in the 1980s started to use that approach to the scientific study of conflict, the scientific study of peace, and try to make the breakthroughs on that. And somebody like Quincy Wright, there was a study of war from the University of Chicago, and he started to model conflicts, use a model, and that was in the 1940s. So there is a lot of, over the last 60 years, a lot of information about the statistics of peace and the scientific approach to peace and peace research. And then myself and Thomas got involved in the peace studies programs. The people who were teaching at academic level then have formed an organization called the International Peace Research Association. And we had conferences every 2 years to try and get that information from all sorts of academics around the world and people involved in peace in peace on the ground and trying to establish peace. And so there is a great body of information out there, and we are, you know, it's very useful to have it. Though I know at a later stage, peace studies has broadened into an awful lot of areas, and rightly so, because the problem is if you say you study peace or you're trying to study peace, I mean, do you study from a historical point of view? Do you study from psychology? Do you study from biology? I mean, the biological basis of aggression was a major area that peace studies went into, and some people are still in. So, I mean, there's a lot. Peace studies can stand by itself, and in some departments it does, but in a lot of areas it goes into different, and rightly so, because the questions we're trying to answer are across the board, I think, of social and cultural structures. I'm not sure how I'm doing for time, but I'll just finish off by saying that that's my kind of retrospective. Peace studies has evolved quite considerably since myself and Thomas started teaching peace, or trying to teach peace studies at university level. There are problems with it already. One of the problems I would have with an organization like UNESCO, which is part of the United Nations and is established to promote peace, but it was established, and I mean, this is very dynamically in 1945, I think it was established right just after the Second World War. An organization like UNESCO, it was amazing to see that being established, or knowing that it was established. But the reason it was established is that this is what they said in their initial preamble to the establishment, that since wars begin in the mind of men, it's in the mind of men that defenses for peace must be constructed. And as far as that goes, it's a very good statement. But my problem with it is that wars don't begin in the minds of men or women. Wars are fought in the mind. You fight a war in your mind, but the war begins and the aggression begins in your heart. So below your mind, somewhere there. So I mean, that's how. And like in I think it was 89, UNESCO were challenged in that, and they issued what was called then the Seville Statement on Violence, and Thomas would probably have known that. And that was a very importantly, it's still very important to say that statement is still there, saying that they had 5 statements. It is scientifically incorrect to say that we've inherited our aggression biologically. It is scientifically incorrect to say that we've inherited psychologically. I mean, the scientists who came together at Seville under the auspices of the UNESCO made this a very clear statement. And to a certain extent, they were correct, and it's one that we should build on. But in another way, they missed some of the issue that war, it's not just in your mind that wars begin. That's one of my criticisms. That, you know, and this may come in later, but they say it's scientifically incorrect to say that humans have a violent brain. No, I don't know if that's how true that is. What the drive of the Seville Statement from UNESCO, and that was that the species like ourselves that have invented war, we seem to have invented war rather than any other animal species, because we're the species that invented it, we can invent peace or we can uninvent it, and that's a very positive sign. And again, I just finish with a quote from Victor Hugo, the French novelist, and he said that there's one thing stronger than all the armies in the world, and that is an idea whose time has come. And I think the idea of peace, certainly the time has come for that, because from a practical point of view, from an environmental point of view, from every point of view, we've got too good at war. We just, you know, this the idea that we can destroy the planet from a thermonuclear point of view 10 times over. I mean, that shows how good we are at war. Possibly because we've been studying war a lot longer than we've been studying peace, but there has been a lot of breakthroughs in the study of peace. And I just mentioned a few of them, and I'm glad to do the retrospective because I know Thomas, you know, has been involved in setting up and trying to set up his Department of Peace Studies at the University of London. And again, he would have met a lot of these issues about why, you know, is it a legitimate study, all going back into the 1980s. But that's my contribution, Thomas. So if that's okay, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Sean. That was great. You didn't do the one thing I'd hoped you'd get onto, which is talk about Ireland. Just tell us briefly, this is my question to you, and others can come in with questions. I mean, you know, when the Good Friday Agreement was signed in Ireland in 1998, we felt in the peace education community, both in Britain and Ireland, that we'd helped bring it into being. I went and met academics in Ireland in both the north and the south who were taking peace seriously. And there's a whole tradition in Ireland of peace studies, peace research, conflict research, you know. I'm amazed that they've not spoken out more against Brexit, because to me, Brexit is a kick in the teeth of the Good Friday Agreement. And, you know, it's like the incredible arrogance of the British Conservative Party, who I have to say have been fighting a war against peace studies ever since the 80s. I mean, I used to get my mail tampered with. I used to get unbelievable harassment from very senior political levels in the Conservative government in Britain. And now those people, seems to me, have pulled off Brexit as a coup against peace. And I don't know why the people of Ireland aren't waving banners saying we want a referendum on unity. I mean, have they put something in the water to put you all to sleep? I mean, the Tories seem to have just coshed all the work we did back in the 80s and 90s. So could you comment on that, please?
Yes, Thomas, that's very interesting. No, there is a movement in Ireland against the problems created by Brexit. I mean, there is, but it's not a very energetic movement at the moment. Maybe it will become a little bit more energetic. You know, the main political party in Ireland who should be looking for a referendum they are going to look for one, but they'll be very careful about, because again, we have to be careful not to fall back into the conflict situation in Northern Ireland. And I think if we look for a referendum because of Brexit, it certainly will stir up one side against another again. So they've just been very careful about not rushing into the reactions against Brexit. I mean, it may come to, at the moment, it hasn't come to a crisis, to a full crisis in Ireland, but it's very near it. And we're trying, if you take some action that might precipitate a crisis that's kind of there, you know, we may be fooling ourselves by keeping a low profile and hoping that it will evolve itself out. But I mean, it's certainly, it may not, and there may be, we may come back to it in relation to Brexit and to the future of the relationships between Ireland, Britain, and Europe.
Okay. Well, thank you. Any other questions for Sean? He's left so much, you know, to explore, but who would like to ask Sean a question? Now you've got him here. You can put your hand up, you know, if you know how to put your hand up in the reactions button, click on that and then the hand comes up. Well, that's the way we do it. Okay, so whilst you're thinking, my last question to you is, I hear what you're saying. I mean, Sinn Féin obviously is the party of unity that wants to reunite Ireland and oppose the whole caboodle. But there are other parties, the Alliance Party in the north. You know, it doesn't take a genius to work out that Brexit is a case under the Good Friday Agreement which should trigger a referendum. I mean, it's in law. It's not like, you know, I think that to be silent at this moment is a form of appeasement. I think people are appeasing the Tory party just as they appeased Hitler, hoping he'd go away, hoping the Tories aren't really that nasty. Look, we don't want to ask too much. We don't want to dare ask a referendum. They may get angry. Isn't that a form of cowardice to not stand up against what is, you know, a sort of crypto-fascist right-wing regime that's taken power? You know, I mean, I'm speaking as a member of the Liberal Democrats, so I'm a activist against Brexit in Europe, as you know. And I just wonder where my Irish colleagues have they lost their courage, is my question.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Thomas. I can't answer for other people, but I know I can see the sensitivity in the immediate response should be that we should call for a referendum on Irish unity. And that in itself would necessarily demand a response from the unionists who don't want Irish unity. And that response might then be counterproductive from a non-peace point of view, because it may go on the streets and it may become violent very quickly. So that's the reason. I don't think it's cowardice. I think they are playing a longer game, some of the political parties, and I think it's to their credit that Sinn Féin haven't jumped on that, and it could have been a bandwagon for them to jump on, but they've been very careful because, and again, you know, after 30 years of conflict, and Sinn Féin were, you know, some of the members were very much involved in the conflict. I can see, I'm giving them the very positive aspect, that they have to be very careful not to get back into that situation. And it's the same with any conflict. I mean, you can make the conflict worse by doing something that you might have the right to do it, but you might just hold off on it. And that's, I mean, I'm not sure if people from outside Britain and Ireland can see that sort of the reasoning behind that, but there are reasonings like that in every conflict. There is a right time to do something and a wrong time to do it. Maybe that's my answer.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Sean. I've set up with the help of Sean and other colleagues the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for Britain and Ireland. We've had several meetings in Dublin and Belfast discussing this problem. You know, I think the TRC model from South Africa is a good one. And you know, I also have a question from Nicola Hague, who's joining us. Her microphone isn't working, but she's met you several times, Sean. She says, "Are money and power often the main drivers for conflict?" That's her question to you.
There's no doubt that money. I mean, it's almost hard to believe the amount of money that's spent on the military industrial complex. I mean, I find it hard to believe when we hear the American, and it's only because America is such an open country. We know the budgets there, the budgets they tell us about, like it's topping $1,000 billion a year. I mean, if that doesn't drive something, nothing would. I mean, that's an amazing figure. And the other figures, like if you hear a figure like the American military have bases in 100 and I don't know how many, the latest figure, 130 countries. Now, I mean, that's, every time I look at that figure, I can't believe it. How come one country can have military bases in another 130? There's only about 200 and odd countries on the planet. And if they had military bases in 130 countries, that's, and the amount of money that it would go on those bases. I mean, money is one of the big driving forces. But it's not I mean, how come we can spend money? It's a culture, you know, how come the American Republicans, who are very much into profit and loss and into making money, how come they can waste so much money? I mean, it's a big culture or mental barrier to jump over to explain and justify that sort of wealth that's been wasted on military, and way above what would be needed for what would be called security, national security. So, you know, 10% of that budget would be more than enough to make every American safe from outside, not inside.
No, thank you for that answer and that question. It's a key issue, obviously, money. We have another question from Igor, our Polish friend. Do introduce yourself, Igor.
Okay. Well, I hope that you can hear me. My name is Igor Kakolewski, and I'm involved in the project of a transnational history textbook Polish-German history textbook, which is called Europe, Our History. And, you know, my main task on this project was just to reflect how coming to terms with the past may contribute to the reconciliation between the two nations which had been divided in the 20th century by wars and conflicts. And I assume this is the reason why I got this invitation from Tom to today's meetings. And thanks a lot, Tom, for your kind invitation. I'd like to go to the first part of Shin's talk and ask perhaps a very naive question. So in advance, I apologize for that. You know, the peace studies, I still don't know a lot about this the subject. First point, history of reconciliations. It seems to me, well, just a few weeks ago, I was supposed to write a comparison between a reconciliation process after World War II between Poland and Germany on the one hand, and France and Germany on the other hand. And, you know, I came across very, very few scholarly articles just trying to compare these two very crucial for Europe reconciliation processes. So I just wonder if there are any studies, comparatistic studies on the history of reconciliation as a matter of fact, and not necessarily as a result of World War II. It might be also World War I, which had such a huge impact on history of Europe and the whole world. So it would be my first question about this comparatistic view on the history of reconciliation. And point two, which is directly connected to that, we have just launched, or we are launching now, a project at my institute I run here in Berlin, and this is the institute is called the Center for Historical Research of the Polish Academy of Sciences in Berlin. So we try to launch now a project on culture of negotiation and compromise. So, and now I'm going a bit to the topic which was touched upon by Thomas in his question about, well, he mentioned, of course, Good Friday Agreement. So we are trying to compare the negotiations of the so-called round tables in Poland, 1989, between the Communist Party and the opposition. In East Germany, the same situation, in the former Czechoslovakia, and in Hungary. And, you know, just the techniques of negotiations, peace negotiations, so avoiding conflicts, bloody conflicts, and scenarios introducing the so-called peaceful revolutions seem to be quite interesting subject for research, peace study research. And, well, you know, the topic is very universal. So we are able to go to, in the 90s, to South of Africa, and we can find some traces of the political culture there, the culture of compromise, reaching compromise, to which also Polish experts contributed. Those people who participated in 1989 at the round table negotiations in Poland, and then in the 90s they were invited to South Africa as consultants. So it would be my second question, culture of negotiations and compromise, if it should be an interesting area of research, again, from comparistic point of view. Thank you.
Go for it, Sean. Complex questions.
Yes, Igor, I mean, your research and your work sounds very interesting, and we wish you the best of luck in them. I'm not sure, maybe just we could do some references by email or whatever, but I know there has been work done, certainly in the International Peace Research Association. Within that organization, when it was very active, there were different commissions, and one of them certainly was on things like the history, trying to establish a textbook that could be taught in any school in Europe, a history textbook, particularly in countries like Germany and Poland, and Germany, France, and France and England, and France, England, Poland. I'm not sure how advanced that commission got, and I kind of have lost contact with it. So maybe Thomas might know more about that as well. I'm not sure. I know that a lot of the people involved directly in the peace negotiations here in Ireland, and we did go to places like South Africa as well, and explained, what they've learned from the type of negotiations that we had to go through, because each conflict seems to be slightly different, and the nature and the background of each conflict is it's very hard to say that you can transfer your experience from one area to another. But it's useful to have people who, like from Poland, who went through that negotiation or the resolutions from the 1980s, and know what they learned. So I'm not sure if I'm giving you information, but Thomas might have a bit as well.
Well, we can be in touch. I mean, I should say Igor didn't introduce. He's also involved with the International Delphic Academy, which we're in the process of setting up. So, we might want to reach out to you in Ireland, because you're famous for your arts and culture, and that's another thing. The Irish realize the secret of peace is to have some good crack, a party, a song, a dance, so let's take that idea forward. Okay, we've been joined by several colleagues from the Middle East, and I'd like to honor them and welcome them. Several colleagues from Iraq who are involved with a peace party in Iraq, which is quite important, and I hope they'll speak shortly, who I've contacted through the recent Barcelona International Peace Bureau. And we have a friend, Mohammed Shoaib, who is joining us, I believe, from Afghanistan. And I'd like to ask him if he'd like to join and be our next speaker, because if any country in the world has suffered from war, it's Afghanistan over the last 20 years of continual warfare. Mohammed, can you hear us?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I can hear you.
Okay. So are you speaking to us from Afghanistan now?
Yes, sir. Right now I'm in Afghanistan.
Okay, so you have the floor. Tell us what you're doing. What is your view of the current situation, and how can we, as the World Intellectual Forum, help, bring peace to your country after this tragedy of 20 years?
Yeah, for sure, sir. But first of all, I would like to just give a brief introduction about the current situation of Afghanistan, like how it started, how that peace negotiations started between the United States and the Taliban. So briefly, I will just speak about that. In 2001, when the United States came to Afghanistan and started war against the Taliban, and when Taliban was ousted from the government, and the new government established, and when the democracy restored in Afghanistan. So after 20 years of all factors, including the United States, the Taliban, and the Afghan government, they realized that this war cannot be won, and no one can win this war, and it's better to solve this conflict with the discussion, and after that they have in 2020 when the Taliban and the United States started a peace talk. So at that time they have made one mistake, because that was a direct discussion between the Taliban and the United States, and at that time they have forgotten about the Afghan government and the Afghan nation, and the United States has accepted all the demands of the Taliban, and the return, and the return, the Taliban didn't give anything to the United States, and due to this, right now in Afghanistan, peace is not restored. I'm living in the eastern part of the country in Jalabad provinces. Every day, there's a kidnapping, and target killings are still going on. And if you remember that ISIS in Afghanistan, it's called Khorasan. Still, you can say like in the last 2 months, there are more than 3 deadly attacks, which caused more than 250 people dead and several injured. And beside that, every day in Kabul and even other provinces, many former government officials, they are targeted and they are abducted, and no one knows that what happened to those people. What I'm saying is that when we are talking about peace, and I think Mr. Steen has given very good information about peace, but one thing I would like to just include that when we are talking about a peace, and a peace between 2 parties, it's not only about these 2 parties who are just fighting with each other. No, there are many other factors which must be considered. Like, for example, in Afghanistan, that was not only the Taliban and the United States. They have forgotten other factors like the Afghan government and the nation. In the peace discussion, a large portion of the country was forgotten, like youth and women. And due to all these factors, peace is not restored in Afghanistan right now, because youth, women, and other political factors were completely forgotten. And due to their absence and that peace discussion, we are just hope that one day peace will be in their full form. It will be restored. And right now, in the government of the Taliban, there are a lot of restrictions on the people of Afghanistan. Like, for example, they have imposed strict restrictions on girls' education, and also they have imposed restrictions on the women and working. And as you said that, like, what international community can do to bring peace or restore peace in Afghanistan. I will tell you one thing, that now under the government of the Taliban, there is no international community exists in Afghanistan. All of you can say, like, most of the embassies has left Afghanistan. Just 5 countries are still in Afghanistan, like neighboring countries: Iran and Pakistan, China, Turkey, and Russia. These are the countries that they have problem with the United States, and just to that they are still in Afghanistan. But all of the countries, they have evacuated their embassy staffs, and not only that, many other international organizations, they have left Afghanistan, such as like World Bank, Asian Bank, and so many other international organizations. They have closed their offices in Afghanistan. So in Afghanistan right now, I can say that there is not a single international organizations that can be there to listen to the people of Afghanistan. Even just last week, one of the biggest United Nations organizations, it's called UNAMA, United Nations Assistance Missions for Afghanistan. They have closed their offices, and they have evacuated their staff to third country. So what I'm saying that one, like in this critical situation, the international community should join us, should be standing beside us to support us in that crucial time. But what we are seeing in Afghanistan, that Afghan nation is completely forgotten by the by the international community. And there are several other problems that are still there in Afghanistan, which the people are facing, but there is no one that that can hear us or even try to help. First of all, I would like to just discuss about the duty or responsibility of the United Nations. In 1945, I think when the UN was established, so the aim was that it will solve the conflicts among other countries and to avoid or stop war between two or other countries. But in Afghanistan, especially in that peace talk between the Taliban and the United States, United Nations didn't take any specific parts. Their duty was just to facilitate the Taliban officials just to travel, because most of the Taliban leaders, there were sanctions or even price on their heads, and they were in the blacklist of the United States and the United Nations. So that was the biggest mistake that what United Nations could do at that time. They didn't do it. They just facilitated the Taliban officials, and they did nothing. In Afghanistan right now, if I'm not wrong, if you ask anyone in Afghanistan, they will just tell you one thing. If you ask them like why United States came in 2001 in Afghanistan, simply they will tell you that 20 years before United States came to Afghanistan just to replace Taliban with the Taliban, and that's true, because in Afghanistan right now people are in very critical situation, because the peace is still not restored, and human rights violation. The Taliban government, they are continuously that violating that human rights of the people of Afghanistan. Still there is as I mentioned earlier, still there are strict restrictions on education and on women working. Not only that, there are so many other things that if I started to discuss, it will take time. But I will just say one thing more, that when we are talking about peace, because in Afghanistan there are many other factors like why that peace discussion didn't work properly, or why it didn't work according to the peace agreement, that Doha agreement, which was signed between the Taliban and the United States. Because in the peace agreement, still we, the people of Afghanistan, we don't know what was in that peace agreement, because there were only just a few points were highlighted, like the Taliban will not allow any other terrorist organizations to operate from Afghanistan or to attack United States or their allies. One. And second, in the return, the US will withdraw their all forces from Afghanistan. Just only that both parties has emphasized only on these 2 points, because at that time the Taliban agreed that after that they will form an interim government, which will include all parties like Taliban, former Afghan government officials, and other minorities. But when after that peace agreement was signed, and they become so aggressive, and they have started capturing the districts and the provinces. And on 15 August, when they captured Taliban, and after that, when they announced their interim government, most of them were the Taliban leaders. Not only that, most of their leaders, they are on the blacklist of the United Nations, and in their cabinet, not a single minority is included, even not a single woman. So what I'm saying, that when we are talking about peace, so all factors must be included. Even like in Afghanistan, that was not only war between the Taliban and the Afghan government, or the Taliban and the United States. In Afghanistan, there were also proxy war was going on. There were some neighboring countries that they were fighting their proxy war in Afghanistan, and this was our biggest failure of the former Afghan government, that they didn't focus on that issue. So finally, I'm saying I will just close my topic only with that final sentence, that when we are talking about peace, we must include all factors. We must include all factors. If this is between a war, a conflict between two parties, so neighboring countries and in the nation, especially youth and women, it must be involved in that peace discussion. And even if you don't involve, if they are not involved, if they don't see themselves in that peace discussion, so they will not show any interest. And I'm not sure that it will work. For example, Afghanistan is here. Thank you.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Mohammed, for your moving testimony. And you raised so many important issues. I'm sure there will be some questions. I have a comment. I mean, I agree with you 100%. The failure of Trump's presidential peacemaking skills is phenomenal. I mean, you know, this chaos you're facing in your country is a legacy by Trump. He created chaos in the US. He created chaos in Europe. He's created chaos in Afghanistan. And I agree 100% that the negotiations in Doha that led to this so-called peace withdrawal agreement should have included the Afghan government, which was representing the actual Afghan people and was the official UN representative. It is unthinkable to me that he went over their heads and that then he just thought he'd done his job. That's done, peace done. He handed the country over to, you know, an extremist, intellectually speaking, a minority interpretation of Islam. The Taliban are coming from a very particular, specific interpretation of Islam, which is not representative of mainstream Islam, and actually not representative of mainstream Afghan society. I know many Afghan students I've taught at the Muslim College in London, and I still have contacts with Afghans, some of whom are in the country. And these Taliban people don't represent actual Afghan intellectuals. I'd be very keen to see if you, Mohammed, can you know, help focalize a World Intellectual Forum presence in Afghanistan. We want to reach out to the most intelligent people in Afghanistan, you know, who are seeking to build peace still. And I think we should send a strong message to Biden, who inherited this mess Trump left. He followed through on the deal, but we should write to Biden, and I'm going to do so with your permission on behalf of the World Intellectual Forum, and say, look, mate, job not finished. You know, chaos in Afghanistan, no peace. There should be a reopening of peace negotiations in Afghanistan to solve all these other issues and bring in, you know, the women's voice, the youth, bring in environmental issues. You know, I have a great faith and love for Afghan culture, and I know that it has the intelligence to solve these problems. But it is a chaos left by Trump, I'm afraid. Any other questions before we're going to move on to our Iraqi friends as our next speakers, who also have some very important insights from Iraq to share? Any other questions about Afghanistan to Mohammed whilst he's here? Put your hand up if you can, if you've mastered that technology. It's not too difficult. Igor, do you have a question for Mohammed? Go for it.
Actually, I don't have a question. Thank you, Mohammed, for presenting this situation in Afghanistan. Now, I'd like to just to touch upon what you said, because, you know, we are listening to the report, and this is by Mohammed, and this is, of course, extremely important to know precisely the situation there. But we should do something, right? And this is something which is so important, because Mohammed's words sounded to me like an appeal to do something and not only to reflect intellectually on the situation in Afghanistan. So I found your, Tom's words right, to write a letter actually, and according to the lines you just told us about. Okay, that's it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sean, your comment or question.
Thanks very much, Thomas. Yeah, very briefly to Mohammed. Yeah, every conflict will have third parties. There's no doubt about that. Both very close and external third parties, and their role is very important in every conflict, from domestic right up to international. They can hinder, they can help. Mostly they hinder, mostly they make the situation worse, but there are always direct parties in conflicts. There are secondary parties, and then there are external parties. So in any conflict, there is that combination, unfortunately, and normally the external parties are there for their own interests, which makes the situation worse.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Okay, so look, Mohammed, we're going to move on, but thank you again for your testimony. And we will keep in touch, and we'll see if we can. I will send you a draft letter to Biden. I just had one question. Has the European Union also entirely left Afghanistan? Because I've met European Union officials who were there trying to help. I know that the European Union would try and do its best for peacemaking. Are you sure they don't have an embassy still in Kabul?
European Union has left on just 2 or 3 days before. Just I think on the last day, on that was 17 or 18 August. They have left. Right now they don't have any embassy or any office in Afghanistan. Just I think a few days before, the European Union has announced around 1.3 billion euros. I think around 1.3 billion euros, and they said that we will spend those monies in Afghanistan for the people of Afghanistan, and we will not give it directly to the Afghan government. I mean the Taliban, and they have said that just to make sure that those monies will not go to the hands of the Taliban. So they are saying that they will come and open their office again in Afghanistan. So still they don't have any offices. Yeah.
Well, thank you. That's slightly good news. So they will reopen it, and I think the letter will also be going to the European Union, because I think that the combined intellectual and economic might of the European Union could help the situation. We should set up an Afghan peace fund in which we pledge a certain amount of money once the successful conclusion of the peace talks. The Americans have left chaos. Let's Europe help tidy it up. That would be my view. Yeah, I will. Anyway, I will be in touch, Mohammed, about that.
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. So if you don't mind, just I would like to just mention a few points with your permission.
Okay, briefly, because I want to move on to Iraq, another big problem.
Yeah. Just briefly. Right now in Afghanistan, like as I mentioned earlier, still there's a lot of problems in Afghanistan that caused by the Taliban. So still that we are expecting, and the international community can do that. Like for example, there are still the international community didn't recognize the Taliban government, and there are around $9.5 billion are seized by the American by the American governments. So this is a very good bargaining chip with the international community. I think they can pressurize on the Taliban government, because if they bring force or pressure on the Taliban that like we will not recognize you until you allow girls for education and women working. So I think this will be a good bargaining case for the international community, which will be which the Afghan people will be benefit, and the international and even the US, even if the US just bring pressure on the Taliban that like if you accept the demands, not the US demands, the demands of the Afghan people, like education for girls, women for working, and a coalition government. We want a government that all Afghans, that include all Afghans, minorities, and many others, and even women. We want women in the cabinet. So I think these two options are still with the international community. So if they bring pressure on the Taliban, so I'm sure that because on the ground reality, as we are living in Afghanistan, so if they bring pressure on these two topics, I'm sure that Taliban will accept. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Those are very important words. Just to say, finally, on Afghanistan, I was on a Zoom conference with the Association of Liberal Democrats in Europe, and we have a peace activist working on Afghanistan, very, very detailed. He told us of 2 plane loads of female judges had just flown out of Kabul because the prisoners who'd been let out of jails by the Taliban were coming to threaten to kill them all. Can you imagine
Yes.
that? 2 plane
Yes,
loads
sir.
of female judges having to flee the country in fear of their lives. I mean, this shows you how crazy the situation is and why we as an international community have to do something about it. I presume you know that story, Mohammed. I mean,
Yes,
have
sir.
your
Yes, sir. I know that. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Actually, sir,
Okay.
I will tell you one thing. In the last 20 years, we have achieved a lot. One thing was that Afghan girls and women, they were in every sector, and that was the biggest achievement. They were in education, agriculture, engineering, medical, even in the justice sector. There were more than 100 Afghan women. They were working in the justice sectors, and there were many rapists, murderers, even the Taliban and the IS militants, when they were captured. So they were brought to their court, and they, according to the justice, so they have sent them to the jails. And when the Taliban, one thing I would like to just mention, when the Taliban were capturing in last month, I mean in the August, when they started capturing the provinces, and there were some provinces there that prison were that jails were existed. So when the Taliban came, so they just broken the jails, and they are all militants left. Not only that, rapists, murderers, and other criminals who were sentenced by those female judge. So now they are free, and some of them they have spent more than 6, 7, 8 to 10 years in the jail. Now they are seeking for the revenge from those female judge, and that's true that because even it came in the news that around 30 female judges, they have signed a letter and sent it to the some international media. And after it come out in the media, so all the nation knows that. But even the Taliban is just saying only one sentence, that this is not done by us. We don't know nothing. This is not the not only the solution to just avoid it, and it means that you are not involved. So their lives are seriously in danger. It's true.
No, thank you again. So thank you for your testimony. Let's move on to Iraq. We have a number of people with us who were at the Barcelona conference for peace recently. And I don't know which one of you wants to speak first, but please feel free to unmute and tell us the situation. What are you doing in Iraq for peace? Because, you know, this is an important country, and you've also suffered a lot of conflict ever since the invasion by America. So who would like to speak first? You'll have to unmute, I'm afraid. I can't, you won't be able to speak without that.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Salam.
Speak English, can you speak Arabic?
My Arabic skills are not very good. We don't have translation, unfortunately. Can you speak in English? Or if somebody is able to translate? Try speaking in English for us. Au French, on peut parler français, si c'est possible.
I am happy to be with you. So we are in Iraq. We in Iraq suffer from problems related to weapons and armed groups.
Where are you speaking from in Iraq? Which part? Are you in Baghdad or Basra?
In Baghdad. I am in Baghdad.
Okay, okay. And what is the party that you represent? Da'i party?
What?
If you want to speak in Arabic, that's fine. And we will translate later. So tell us your speech in Arabic, okay? And we can get it translated.
I will have a translator soon. But it's a little late.
You can speak in Arabic. You know, we will understand, we can translate later. So
نعم أنا من بغداد وسعيد جدا أن أكون معكم في هذا الملتقى. بحسب الرسالة التي وصلتني عبر الإيميل فهو ملتقى شهري وأنا سأكون معكم في كل ملتقى إن شاء الله وسيكون معنا هناك مترجم سيكون حاضر في الملتقيات القادمة ومن أجل طرح رؤية السلام ووضع الحلول المناسبة لحل النزاعات التي تنشب في مناطق متعددة من دول العالم. ونعتقد أن سبب النزاعات بالحقيقة هو الصراع على السلطة. جزء كبير من النزاعات التي تنشب في معظم مناطق العالم سببها الصراع على السلطة. الصراع على السلطة هو الذي يدفع بالكثير من الجماعات المسلحة أن تحمل السلاح وتهدد الآخرين. ونحن في العراق عندنا مشاكل بعد سقوط النظام السابق الدكتاتور ومجيء الديمقراطية عبر التحالف الدولي بعد عام 2003. واجه العراقيون ولا زال العراقيون يواجهون عنف المتشددين والمتطرفين الذين ينتمون لجماعات مسلحة هذه الجماعات المسلحة تدعمها أنظمة إرهابية في معظم منتشرة في منطقة الشرق الأوسط. فلذلك نحن حاولنا أن نجنب شعبنا ويلات الجماعات المسلحة، لكن بالحقيقة كانت هذه الجماعات المسلحة لها الدور البارز في نشر العنف بين الناس، وهذا سببه التفسير الخاطئ والفهم الخاطئ لجميع أو لأغلب النصوص الدينية التي الناس ورثوها من الماضي من التاريخ ولم يكونوا قد عقلوها في الحاضر. فلذلك نحن في العراق عانى الشعب العراقي ولا زال يعاني، ومعنا كثير من شعوب المنطقه تعاني من الارهاب الذي يعتمد على الايديولوجيات المتطرفه. نسعى من خلال مشاركتنا في هذه الملتقيات الى ايصال صوت السلام وصوت الاعتدال وصوت الوسطيه وصوت العقل لجميع محبي السلام في مناطق العالم في كل بقاع العالم، من اجل ان نلتقي تحت كلمه واحده وهي كلمه السلام. السلام يجب ان يكون للجميع، للرجال والنساء والاطفال، يجب ان يحظوا بكميه من السلام يستطيعون ان يعيشوا فيها بسلام وامان، ويجب ان نبعد عنهم شبح العنف وشبح التطرف وشبح الحروب التي نعتقد بان الشرق الاوسط الان في طريقه الى الانزلاق الى حرب بين دول مثل ايران او السعوديه او دول الخليج اخرى او جماعات مسلحه من عده دول في المنطقه. نحاول ان نجنب شعوبنا ونجنب الانسان بشكل عام شبح هذه الحروب.
Thank you very much. I will get your speech translated by an Arabic speaker so others can understand. I do understand some Arabic and I could hear the word salam a lot. So I know that you're very interested in peace. So this is what we have in common. Thank you for joining us. Yeah. What would your colleague like to speak as well? We have another colleague from Iraq who's joined us, a sheikh, I believe. Would he like to speak? Your friend.
No. Yes.
Okay, if he wants to speak, he's welcome. Again, it would have to be in Arabic, I understand. So shukran, thank you, shukran.
ان شاء الله في الملتقيات القادمه سيكون معي مترجم ان شاء الله يتم الترجمه للغه الانجليزيه. اليوم كان من المفترض ان يكون مترجم معي لكن تاخر قليلا.
Okay, I honor your work for peace. It's very important. So let's keep in touch. And I have a long interest in the history of the Iraq conflict. I think it's shocking. Let me just give a response from the World Intellectual Forum. I think it's utterly shocking, the situation that the US and UK invaded Iraq in 2003. I was one of 1 million people. We marched against that war. The link that was made with the 9/11 bombings in the media in the US and UK at the time, I think was totally false. There was no link. Saddam Hussein had nothing to do with the bombings in New York. It was a pretense job by the media. And, I took some time, but I realized eventually the whole 9/11 thing was a kind of a cover-up, a smokescreen. And I've written a history of 9/11, what actually happened. It's still a mystery. And I've created the International Commission for the Historical Inquiry into 9/11, which I invite my Iraqi friends and Afghans to be part of, because we've still not got to the truth of what happened on that day in New York and who was behind it. And the fact that that a lie was then used to generate war against these proud and noble Islamic nations, to me, is a stain against the character of America and Britain, which only truth can efface. In the Irish conflict, it was only truth that finally got peace. We will never see peace in Iraq and Afghanistan until the truth comes out about this whole 20-year sequence. And I'm pledged as an intellectual to help uncover that truth. And so And I just want to say also, and I wish my Arabic was better, I apologize. I've just done a 10-year study of a commentary on the Quran. You mentioned Allah. I have a great respect for Allah. And I believe that ultimately Allah is al-Haq, the truth. Only if we together find what Allah actually is, what the truth is, can we then bring peace between different religions. Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, all the religions of the world. There's no reason for us to be fighting, but we have to really find the truth at the heart of it. So, and to me, Baghdad, you used to have the House of Wisdom, the Beit al-Hikmah. The Beit al-Hikmah was like the World Intellectual Forum, founded by the Caliph, and scholars and intellectuals from all over the world came. They translated things from Hindu, Sanskrit into Arabic. They translated Greek manuscripts, Aristotle, Plotinus into Arabic. I want to refound the Beit al-Hikmah in Baghdad and get the good story relaunched. And I'd be happy to work with you on that. Let's do it. I also am a great admirer of Agatha Christie. Just a little note for those that don't know. She was in Iraq in the 1920s and 30s as an archaeologist, and that's where she got all her ideas for her crime novels. I think what was done to the people of Iraq and Afghanistan is a crime scene. And we need Agatha Christie's skills to work out what on earth happened there. So I'm sorry, if I could say all that in Arabic, I would. I apologize. I will do better. And next time I pledge we will have a translator who's fluent. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Right.
Thank you.
شكرا. Okay.
شكرا. Thank you, Dr. Thomas. أنا سعيد جدا. I am happy. سعيد جدا أن أكون معكم إن شاء الله، ونحن نسعى لتجنيد شعوب المنطقة والشعب العراقي بالأخص، تجنيبه شبح الحروب وشبح الجماعات المتطرفة وشبح العنف، ولكن العمل خطر في العراق ويعرضنا إلى الخطر، ولكننا سوف نمضي في هذا الطريق من أجل نشر السلام ونشر العدالة وإبعاد المجتمعات بشكل عام عن شبح العنف، إبعاد المرأة، إبعاد الرجل، man, women, children، هذه كلها نسعى لتخليصهم من الجماعات المسلحة.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
No, I agree. I mean, I think what I heard there is that peace has to involve everyone, women, children, everyone. It's the same thing our Afghan friend was saying. And of course it's true. And this is what actually Islam is supposed to be about. In my commentary on the Quran, I've explained it as a peace text. And, if you reread the Quran properly, and I think all English-speaking people could use my commentary, it's not a war manual. Okay, so look, thank you again for taking part. I want to move on. We have a colleague from who's with us from Armenia and who is going to talk. Gevork Manoukian has worked with me drafting a peace declaration. This is another conflict situation that involves Armenia and Azerbaijan. Sadly, last autumn, a war broke out, which was bloody and brief and led to many fatalities. And Gevork and I have drafted a document for the World Intellectual Forum and my Peace Studies Institute. It's only a draft, it still needs working on. But Gevork, could you talk us through why you feel we should issue a declaration and what needs to be done? And then we'll hear from Birjan Unver, who has some, hopefully, positive comments to make about how we can improve the document. Gevork, please, the floor is yours from Armenia.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, colleagues, for this opportunity. The thing is that 1 year ago, last year, Azerbaijan attacked Artsakh Republic and occupied significant parts of the republic. And the situation now, after a year, the situation is very, very bad. So I thought that it is necessary, it would be good to make a statement by the World Intellectual Forum. And I suggested Thomas a draft, and we designed a draft, and I can now present it shortly. The first part.
Do read it out. If you want to read it out, that's fine. Yeah, yeah.
Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, that's the best way of doing it. Yeah. And then we'll have comments.
Okay. The statement is about that forum is concerned on the situation in the Artsakh Republic after the 44 days bloody war of last autumn 2020. Azerbaijan has occupied significant territories essential for Artsakh Armenian population survival and well-being. Meanwhile, the status of Artsakh still remains unresolved, and the Armenian population is under permanent military threat. In spite of the international law principles and in spite of the UN Charter, Articles 1 and Article 33 on the peaceful settlement of international disputes, Azerbaijan declares that it has resolved the problem of Artsakh by force and it doesn't exist anymore. We think that this can become a very dangerous precedent. In addition, Azerbaijan continues to keep more than 250 Armenian prisoners and hostages, among which are many civilians. Acts of open destruction of the Armenian Christian cultural and historical heritage are being committed. Many churches, monuments, cross stones were desecrated and destroyed. Turkish military and Syrian Islamic mercenaries continue to stay in the occupied areas after the war, remaining as a serious threat for Artsakh Armenian population. Occupying significant part of Artsakh Republic, including Hadrut and Shushi cities, taking advantage of military weakness of Armenia, in May 2021, Azerbaijan invaded also the territory of Armenia itself on several kilometers. Azerbaijan and Turkey present more and more demands to Artsakh and Armenia. And after the war, Azerbaijan wields the water and water sources of Artsakh, occupying the strategic heights of Artsakh. This is a big threat for both Armenia and Artsakh security. We call Azerbaijan. Here is 6 points. To return to the constructive negotiation process in the framework of OSCE Minsk Group, to immediately release all Armenian prisoners and hostages, 3, to return the occupied areas of Artsakh Republic, including Shushi and Hadrut cities. 4, to accept our offer to mediate the spiritual, cultural, and interfaith aspects of this conflict. To be prepared to host a gathering of educators, intellectuals, and cultural leaders from Armenia and Artsakh, and to show them around Azerbaijan to stay so they can understand how Armenians see this conflict. To make the IIPSGP commentary on the Gospels and Quran available in schools and universities throughout Azerbaijan, and to have them translated into Azeri language. The forum and the institute call Armenia to accept our offer to mediate the spiritual, cultural, and interfaith aspects of this conflict, to be prepared to compromise, to find a non-violent, acceptable, and holistic solution this long-standing conflict once and for all. To be prepared to host a gathering of educators, intellectuals, and cultural leaders. Armenians see this conflict, so they can understand how Armenians see this conflict. To make the IIPSGP commentary on the Gospels and the Quran available in schools and universities throughout Armenia, and to have them translated into the Armenian language. We call Artsakh Republic to accept our offer to mediate the spiritual, cultural, and interfaith aspects of this conflict, to be prepared to compromise to find a non-violent, acceptable, and holistic solution this long-standing conflict once and for all, to be prepared to host a gathering of educators, intellectuals, and cultural leaders from Azerbaijan, and to show them around Artsakh so they can understand how Azeris see, how Armenians see this conflict. To make the IIPSGP commentary on the Gospels and the Quran available in schools and universities throughout Artsakh Republic, to have them translated into the Armenian language. The Institute and the Forum call the international community to contribute the realization of the inalienable right of self-determination of Artsakh Armenian population, and recognize the independence of Artsakh Republic following successful mediation, which will address the cultural, spiritual, and religious aspects of this conflict. We believe that solving complex political and religious problems and disagreements by warfare in today's modern world system is outmoded and counterproductive. We urge all parties to mediate this conflict and similar problems worldwide for the long-term benefit of all concerned. Let us harness each other's goodwill and moral intelligence instead of bringing out the very worst inside human beings, as war always does. Sorry for...
No, thank you. Thank you very much, Gevork. Thank you for reading that out. So look, we're going to discuss this. It's a really complicated conflict. I've studied it as part of my degree even. I did East European history in depth. I've been reading a biography of Stalin when he was a young man. Battles between Armenians and Azeris have been going on for, decades, centuries. How can we hope to come in late to this and try and make some constructive suggestions? I'm going to turn just briefly to our friend in Dubai, Kanu Mega, to comment quickly before we move on to other comments. Kanu is a professor of neurophysiology, and she studied the neurophysiology of conflict and violence. Kanu, give us some thoughts about how, we heard from Sean that science can help peace. I mean, you're a scientist. We have other scientists with us in the World Intellectual Forum. What can you say as a scientist to people that are stuck in these old inherited conflicts? Is it a neurophysiological problem? And if so, what can we do? Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Thomas, for providing me this opportunity to speak on World Intellectual Forum on the conflict, peace and conflict issues. And yes, it's very difficult situation. As I heard from Armenia, Iraq, and Afghanistan, it's very sad to hear all this from different part of the world. And as the first speaker, during the first speech, when the first speaker was discussing, so there was a kind of a statement that he quoted that, is human mind made like that? So absolutely not. Human mind is actually not made like that. We all are the kind of physiology and anatomy we all are born with have a very perfect mechanism to deal with the stressful situations. We all come under, we all encounter environmental stress, psychological stress, and that triggers the cascade of hormones in our brain, and which leads to a lot of physiological changes like increase of heartbeat, increase of blood pressure, and blood rush through all the body parts. So we have all the mechanisms for our hormonal, these responses. Depends how we respond to these situations, depending upon how we deal with the situation, because the hormonal response is not in our control. The epinephrine, cortisol, they will definitely be released from the different part of the brain, but that response, in response to what we, how we react, how we deal with that situation is in our control. As I have discussed in my earlier talks also, there are different parts of the brain which deals with the logical thinking and emotional thinking. So during this conflicting situation, when the emotional part of the brain overpowers the logical part of the brain, which is the prefrontal area, so in that situation we fail to deal with the situation and we fall into the trap and we become a kind of a victim of the situation. So during that we are fail to take the right decision. So as you asked that how neuroscience can play a role in encountering this situation. So neuroscience, as I said, that hormonal release is not in our control, but definitely there are some studies. There are many studies, in fact. So one study I would like to just mention, that Dr. Herbert, he's from Institute of Mind and Body from the Medicine Institute at Massachusetts. He has developed he has spent most of his career in studying all these techniques which are involved how to counter the stress responses. So he has quoted various techniques, like one of them is this deep breathing. As we all know, one of them is this deep breathing which is involved in our yoga practices, the pranayam, and the Indian these yoga exercises. And deep breathing is one of the very powerful exercise which one can perform during this stressful situations. And second thing which he has quoted is focusing on the soothing words like calmness, peace. So when you focus on these words during that situation, the stress or conflicting situation, so this will try to like kind of create a sense of calmness in your brain. And one more thing he has quoted, which is the repetitive prayer. So repetitive prayer, if you just practice this repetitive prayer practice during this stressful situation, this also like kind of helps you to counter this stressful situation. And in addition to yoga, he has also quoted Tai Chi. Tai Chi is from like another practice, which is also very powerful practice for which one can perform during these stressful situations. And in addition to this, there are various other things like physical anxiety. To control the physical anxiety, one can do a brisk walking, deep breathing, brisk walking to release the tension. So like there are many therapies he has quoted in his research articles to encounter the stress. And one more, the last but not the least, is the social support. You can have the social support of your relatives, close friends, family, and your closest ones during this stressful situations. So in all, I would like to say that everything can be resolved provided we look into the problem in a way that we want to find the solution. If you just look it into in a way that it's like a problematic situation, so then we can't find the solution. We have to look it in a very positive way, that everything is every power, all the you can say the naturally we are equipped to deal with the situation, provided we have the focus to understand the situation and know how to deal it. So as I said, the logical part is also in our brain, the emotional part is also our brain. So it's better, it's good to understand that not to become a victim of your emotional brain, and rather think logically and counter the situation in a positive way.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Kanu, for your brief sharing. Maybe next month you might want to go into more detail with a PowerPoint or something.
Definitely, I will just explain. I would like to present in a more scientific, like the kind of illustrations. I would be very happy to present.
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you very much. It's very insightful. And just to say that one of our colleagues, the coordinator for the Institute and the World Economic Intellectual Forum in Monaco, Helena Lorentzen, who's not with us, but she's joined us previously, just submitted a thesis to UNITA, the UN training agency, about UN peacekeeping forces. She has proposed that they should be trained in meditation, so that Sean mentioned Irish peacekeeping troops up in the Lebanon. But what Helena has said, she's a lifelong meditator and a student of the physiological benefits that meditation brings. You know, that can be measured. It's a tangible, scientifically proven thing. Meditation helps resolve conflict in yourself and with your colleagues. So why shouldn't the UN peacekeeping troops be trained in meditation skills? That's a very concrete proposal she's managed to smuggle into the UN system, and I hope someone picks up on it, because that's the kind of peacekeeping troops we need for the 21st century, in my opinion. Right. Okay. Thank you again, Kanu. Now, let's go to, before we come to, well, let's have any comments on Gevork, and then we have an important presentation from Professor Mishra, who's joining us from India, about science and peace. He's been involved with a particular scientific body on peace work, and I'm hoping he'll present something of its history to us, because I think scientists and other intellectuals, we do have a role to play in peacemaking, as long as we stay cool and do our meditation. So let's have a comments from anyone about Gevork. Birjan, it's over to you now.
Thank you, Thomas, and thank you, Professor Shan, and greetings to you all. I am original Turkish US citizen, currently in Istanbul, live in New York, and my organization based in both New York, two different organizations, the Late Millennium, and also in Turkey, Işık Bin Yılı, which is actually the counterpart of the Late Millennium. And my organization based in New York is associated with the United Nations since 2005. So first, I'd like to respect and refer to Professor Shan's reference to science is the solution for peace. And I'd like to remind that UN has Science for Peace and Development. Actually, it is November 10, and also it is a week, Science for Peace and Development. And in connection with that, really, what is the main issue is here, or we've been facing throughout the centuries and decades, all that. The brilliant minds and all the natural resources and technically natural environment of humankind, all or majority of the world and each and every country channel allocated to destruction, to war in any form, and under the competition, under the collaboration, under the partnership. So I think the key question is, whatever the conflict we are talking about, how can we undo this and really channel to science, that science can serve for peace and development and sustainability, all, not only one country's favor or another, but the globe as the world as one place for all of us. And the second point, I'd like to really mention this. This is one of the missing points here. I am not an expert on Azerbaijan, but I've been in Armenia, Yerevan. I gave 4 lectures in 2010, but it wasn't on Azerbaijan or Karabakh or Armenia issue, but it was the over 100 centuries issue that Armenian claims. And unfortunately, even they put in their constitution to claim the Eastern Turkey is belong to Armenia and will be, and also they have some proxy government claiming that. So I'm not going to get in that, but what I am trying to say is here, I follow up through the UN system, and there are 4 UN resolutions on over 30 years of occupation of Armenia in Karabakh. But again, this is, I'm not expert, but I am a concerned citizen, and I am a representative of NGO, which is my organization, and it's a volunteer-based organization. We don't get any fund or source from any government, any diaspora, anyone, only volunteer efforts. So my point is, what is the most missing point is here. When Mr. Gevork Manoukian is presenting, reading the issue, we don't have an Azerbaijan academician or Azerbaijan civil society, as we have Iraqi speaker here, as we have Afghani speaker here, but why don't we have an Azerbaijan? In order to, in my opinion, in order to move forward, again, I am not expert, I am a concerned citizen, I can research, I can look up, and I know what is all claim, and I also have some objection, but I'm not going through that. But what I am proposing is, let's schedule this concept, another meeting, and then please bring in civil society and or academician, someone has equal level with Mr. Manoukian, so that can be equal level quality of the discussion to bring this on an equal level, and also the proposal of what Armenia wants or what they feel is the right. So let's hear them too, what they feel, what what is their story, and when we represent each on the equal level, equal timing, like the UN gives, like 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 10 minutes, each and every government, whether the smallest, the largest country. So once each party represent on the equal level who really touches the most, I am kind of third party, because I am not an Azerbaijani, neither representing none of the Azerbaijan organization, but I do have friends and colleagues, certainly. So that's my request. And as a third point, and I'm gonna again refer to Professor Shan, which is really, when we look at any conflict, and throughout the session it has brought out, but in this circumstances also it makes more sense, as in Afghanistan, as in Iraq, as in Kurdish issue, as in Armenian Turkish question. Okay, I have a true challenge here. If Armenian diaspora in the US pour all those sources over 100 years, or America behind and or together, to Armenia, Armenia would be jewel of the world today. In the same context, if all the Kurdish supporters, PKK supporters and their extensions armed. So if those found weapons, destructions, polarizing, creating puppet governments, that's the whole game, not the unifying, the connecting the world, but polarizing and controlling with the puppet governments each and every part of the world. So if those over 40 years since my youth, this Kurdish issue is going on, if those sources went to really developing those regions, also there wouldn't be any issue, because this is like not only let's say Azerbaijan, Armenia, Turkey, Kurdish, Turkish, Iraq issue, Syria issue. Look at Syria. We see much more clear illustration, pictures, what's going on. And in Kurdish issue, there are over 20 countries. Even if Kurdish people and Turks are really want to come together, and they are, some at least, except those terrorists. So they won't let them, because the sources funds goes wrong direction. So how can we change it? That's the key question. And my request is, please invite someone on the equal level and give time and space who is eligible. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Birjan, for sharing. And I appreciate your comments. And yes, absolutely. I mean, I have actually been trying to make contact with Azerbaijani intellectuals for the last year and a half. So if you yourself have any contacts, and I think you've sent a few possible
names. Yes, only two. One is from the Azerbaijan Diplomatic Academy, who was speaker on my webinar on September 12th on title Downfall, Democracy, COVID-19, Natural Disasters, Visions Towards Solution. He was speaker, and therefore I have contact with him. And since this is not only intellectual forums issue, this is not Thomas or Birjan or even Mr. Manoukian's issue. This is a global issue. No one should have right to determine, lead through alone, as long as the initial parties who are directly affected is a part of it. That's really what, therefore I felt so, how do you say, so right to reach out who I know, who is academician, vice rector, and also who I collaborated in New York, president of Azerbaijan Society of America. She is my friend for over 20-30 years. So, you reach out who you know, who really directly touch on and affected, and they have their own view. So I'm not going to come up with a statement or this and that, but I'm making overall perception, my perception, and how this should be proceed if it's going to next step. Thank you.
I think, okay, so I would like to, I'll be in touch, but I will certainly invite them for next month's meeting. Thank you for that.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay. Next, I'd like to invite Dr. Kushala Prasad Mishra to speak. He is a scientist involved with radiation research, but he's president of the Asian Association for Radiation Research. And I'm hoping he's going to tell us a bit about how that body came into being as an example of successful collaboration among scientists. Dr. Mishra, are you there for us? He's speaking from India.
Yes. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, fine. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to talk to you about something which is feared by the very word, that is atomic radiation. Moment we talk of atomic radiation, the picture in our mind, am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah.
Is it okay? You can hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Okay. So moment we talk about atomic radiation, the picture that comes to our mind is Hiroshima and Nagasaki atomic bombing. So the conception that the power of atom is destructive, is to be frightened of, is not so much, is what I would like to argue. There is a lot from the power of atom that is doing good to society, can do even more with increasing research. So my idea is that how research on radiation coming from atom can be used for improving health of people, how radiation can be used to improve environment in which we live, how radiation can be applied to generate electricity, which we need so much. So for this purpose, in Asian countries, there has been a thinking that the scientists working in the area of radiation research should come together and should try to tackle and solve the problem of people, problem in society, problem of health by using the technology of radiation. So Thomas was very particular to know about the organization that is Asian Association for Radiation Research. I would like to show you some picture of what this organization stands for, what is the objective of formation of this organization, and how at the moment it stands to promote radiation research, radiation science, and emerging technologies for improvement of health of society, and also to develop technologies that can give to improving the living standard of people in the globe. So I have few slides to tell you, Dr. Thomas.
You should have permission now. You should, if you share your screen. Yeah, yeah.
If I can share the screen.
Yeah.
I don't know, let me see. Here. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So in this forum today, I'd like to draw your attention to the organization called Asian Association for Radiation Research, and in short, we call it AARR. I was very, very surprised and also got interested in that. Thomas was very curious to know some details about this organization. So therefore, I'm just making an attempt to give you a brief picture of what AAR is. As you know, in 1945, atom bomb was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. There are many stories about health of the people who survived this tragedy. They are suffering from many kinds of diseases. I had the privilege to be in Japan for many years, and I too have been very emotional about what happened by dropping the atomic bomb in Japan. But 60 years after, that is in 2005, a scientist from Japan, also some scientists from other Asian countries, with the generous support, financial support from Japanese government, it was thought to create an organization where we can practice, where we can study, where we can infer how radiation affects our health, and how this radiation can be used to improve the health of people, especially in the treatment of cancer. So many researchers who are looking for the use of radiation for cancer research, how cancer is caused and how cancer can be treated by atomic radiation, got together and they formed what we call AARR. So first Congress of the scientists from Asian countries was held on November 16, 2005 at Hiroshima International Center, Hiroshima. And this was sponsored by Japanese Association of Radiation Research and Japan Radiation Research Society. Under the president of Japanese scientist, President Keni Kamiya and Professor Onishi. The secretariat of this organization is at National Institute of Radiological Sciences, Chiba, in Tokyo. And that time, Dr. Yoshiya Shimada accepted the responsibility to become secretary of this organization. The office bearers after the conference were elected, and the first president of AAR was Dr. Takeo Onishi from Japan. I happened to be elected the first vice president from India, and Dr. Shu from China, and Dr. Siangul Yu from Korea. So these were the key scientists who gathered together and debated the possible promotion and more effective application of radiation in treatment of diseases, especially the treatment of cancer. And this organization also instituted some Asian award. And this award is given in the area of physics, in the area of chemistry, and also in the area of biology and medicine. These are the three awards which are given to senior scientists who have already made their mark in the area of research. Another feature of AAR has been to promote young scientists, make them interact with the senior scientists in the field. And this way we proposed to initiate a more meaningful dialogue between younger researchers and senior researchers in the area of atomic research. So Young Scientist Award is a very important feature of AAR. And I have been a very strong supporter of this activity of the AAR, which is going very well. The AAR has got a council, and these councillors are elected from respective countries' Society of Radiation Research. Respective countries nominate scientists on the council, and at the moment we have nominations from about 20 countries in Asia. As you know, there are 51 countries in Asia. Our aim is to reach each of these countries, because in one way or other, either in research or application, in radiology, in X-rays, there are professional bodies in each of these countries. Our aim at the moment is, and my task as president of this organization is, to reach out to each of the societies in respective countries. So we are almost in a process of building a stronger association and expanding our professional approach to all the countries in Asia. But we are not secluding the countries of Europe and United States, Australia, and so on. We are also in communication with them. For those of you who are from European countries, should know that there is a European Association of Radiation Research. The respective countries have got their own research societies, like UK has got UK Radiation Research Society. France has got very strong group of radiation researchers in France. So from these countries as well, we interact from the platform of Asian Association of Radiation Research. And I'm glad to share with you that we have established a very strong connection, very strong interaction with European Association of Radiation Research. And also now from the radiation researchers from United States and Australia. We are trying to build, we are trying to promote, we are trying to innovate the research for applications of radiation in diagnosis and treatment of cancer. I will talk to you about a little later, but just let me give you a broad picture of what this is. So AAR third council meeting took place in Seoul at the time of the second Asian Congress of Radiation Researchers on May 17, 2009. So you will notice that every 4 years, we hold the Asian Congress of Radiation Research. 2005 was in Hiroshima and 2009 was in Seoul, South Korea. Again, there was a committee office bearers with Professor Onishi from Japan as president, myself as vice president, and Singyul Song as vice president, and many councillors. At the moment, we have about 40 councillors from about 20 countries. So on average, about 2 councillors have been included in the council from each country which is coming up. And our aim is to extend our activities to many other countries. And the second year, after 4 years, the office bearers elected were here with Professor Onishi as president. He was doing good job and was spending a lot of time and had passion for organizing and consolidating the professionals in science. And I was asked to continue as vice president, and Professor Xu from China became another vice president, and Zhou became vice president from South Korea, and Polat Kajimbek from Kazakhstan became another vice president. That was in the conference held in Seoul, South Korea. And Shimada continued to be the secretary. And chairman of the award committee for young scientists as well as for senior scientists in Asian countries became Dr. Choi from South Korea. And he got quite involved in the meeting the objectives of the conference. I'm glad to share with you that the organization does not just believe in having the conference. There have been many activities. Every 2 years we meet to discuss what needs to be done, who needs to be approached, what needs to be directed, what needs to be innovated, and so on. And I'm glad to share with you the journals that are being published from Asian countries. From Japan, we have got Radiation Research Society journal called Journal of Radiation Research, which is quite respected journal. Likewise, we have Journal of Nuclear and Radiochemical Sciences from Japan. And from Korea, we have got a Journal of Korean Association for Radiation Protection. And from India, we have Indian Journal of Radiation Research with myself as editor-in-chief of the journal from 2005 to now. Now this journal has been, in India, it has been named Journal of Radiation and Cancer Research for the regions of reaching more younger scientists and getting to the work. There is a very brief rule book proposed by Professor Onishi. In our discussions in the office bearers meeting, he strongly argued that the constitution of the organization should not be elaborate material which people cannot understand. It should be as simple as possible and should be restricted to minimum bureaucratic situation in the organization. I have been also very appreciative of this approach, because if you make elaborate, complicated, legal-based organization, then many scientists do not understand the paras of the legalities involved in functioning of the organization. So the rule book of Asian Association of Radiation Research is very simple, and this is available on the website, those of you who may feel interested. This slide, I apologize, was a list of the counselors I thought I will give you, but it didn't work very well, so I would like to skip. But just to mention that there are about 40 counselors from about 18 to 20 countries. My aim is, during my presidency, to reach at least 40 countries of Asia out of 51. So we are working very hard to expand our activities, to strengthen professional organizations, also to reach out to those who are not yet included into the activities of the association. The third conference of the ASEAN Association of Radiation Research was held in Beijing under the president of Professor Xu, who is the Director General of the Radiation Protection Program in China, and with Secretary Professor Yang Quinji, and I myself as Vice President of this organization. The fourth conference was held in Kazakhstan in 2017 under the president of Professor Kajimpet, who is director of the Cancer Research Center in Kazakhstan, and now president of the university. Now, with this background, generally in these conferences, 500 to 800 scientists take part. I'm glad to share with you that in the conference in Kazakhstan that took place, there were 650 scientists from Asian, European, and American states. And it was a big gathering to discuss real issues involved in the research and how the future should be done. The main point that is to be mentioned is that now the 5th Asian Congress of Radiation Research has become the responsibility of India, with me as President, Thomas. And this conference was to be held between November 17 and 19, 2021, with me as President and my colleague, Dr. B.N. Pandey as Secretary. But this got postponed to next year, that is 2022, due to Corona pandemic. Because the guidelines of the government were such that we just could not afford to assemble large number of scientists who gather in an Asian Congress of Radiation Research. So after lots of discussion and deliberate debates, very extensive consultations, we came to the conclusion that it is better to postpone it by 1 year, and it is postponed to 2022. So basically, the Asian Association of Radiation Research is the professional organization of atomic radiation researchers to understand how cancer is caused, how radiation can be used to treat cancer, how the developments in new areas take place in nuclear medicine, especially that how isotopes can be used to reach out the drug in targeted areas of the body and so on. So it's a wide scope, and we are trying to expand its horizon of working and also trying to consolidate the professionals from Asian countries into this organization. So far, we have been very happy with our progress. So far, we have feeling very satisfied with meeting the objectives. It's my responsibility now to expand and connect to larger number of countries in Asia to make this organization stronger. We are hoping that in India next year, there will be more than 1,000 scientists in this conference. And usually the conference is strong in scientific quality of the presentations. It is just not available to make a crowd which makes no meaningful direction. Very senior scientists in the area of radiation research and applications, nuclear research and technology development are invited, and policymakers, academicians, doctors, physicians, cancer researchers, cancer physicians, they are all invited, and a blend of scientists is gathered, and a very serious debates takes place. I hope that with your support, I am able to do this task in my capacity as president of AARR. Thank you very much for listening to me. And if you have any curiosity or question, I would be too happy to further inform you.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Misra, for your short talk. And if you could stop sharing your screen, that would be good. And we'll just take a few questions to Dr. Misra before we close. I mean, my first comment is that it's an important work you're doing. And I've been inspired by many scientists in my time when I set up the Peace Studies Institute. Professor Tom Kibble, who was head of physics at Imperial College, he ran, he's dead now, he was knighted. So Tom Kibble was the president of Scientists for Peace and Global Responsibility. I think there's a big overlap between the work of scientists like yourself and you know, the peace research community that broadly speaking is active. And I can see the links between what you're doing. Obviously, it was founded, your organization, in Hiroshima because of the, you know, aftermath. So one issue is obviously health issues, people that are subject to radiation. I mean, some people in the green movement would say that, you know, there's huge ecological problems with the nuclear weapons industry and the nuclear, even the nuclear energy industry. They're interconnected. You know, there's an argument often made that we need to abolish all nuclear weapons. So I suppose there are huge issues. I don't know if your radiation research society looks at people that are critical of nuclear weapons, for instance, or would you have members who are engaged in nuclear weapons research? What if you would get an application from a Chinese scientist saying, yes, I'm a radiation researcher, I'm inventing a bomb that can kill 3,000 million more people than any other bomb? I mean, do you have an ethical, like, would you allow them to be members?
No, it is a professional body. It does not aim to include large number of people, because here there is a serious business of science. We discuss where we are, and after 4 years, where we have reached. So our goal is not really to include larger number. Our goal is to include real professionals in the field so that we can look at the advancements. We can point out where research should be focused.
Sure.
We can take up innovative research for more applications in the area of health, environment, and food.
Okay.
So it's really not aiming to have larger number, but it's aiming to have the leading scientists in the area from all over the globe, especially from Asian countries.
Okay, no, I understand. Any other questions to Mishra before we have a final couple of people to contribute? I noticed you had some more slides, so maybe you can postpone the rest of your talk till next time, and we could have a bigger discussion, because I know that Professor Mishra has been involved with the Jain Institute in Ladnan. And one of the questions the Jains are interested in is, what are atoms made of? What are particles made of? The Jains believe that everything is alive. It has jiva. Every little particle of existence is alive. And this is why they say non-violence is so crucial. Nuclear weapons are the most violent thing we can do with atomic knowledge. So maybe we can have a little discussion next time about microparticles and Jain physics and how we can use this knowledge for peace. That would be very exciting. I'd just like to introduce finally our friend Annalise Adair from America. We've talked a lot about America previously. We've had colleagues speaking about Afghanistan and so on, but you know, there's another side to America, which is the good America. Young, enthusiastic and intelligent scholars. And I want to just congratulate Annalisa. She's just been awarded her PhD. And so as a young scientist, Dr. Mishra talked about, you know, young scientists and old scientists coming together. Annalisa, just very briefly, tell us, are you happy to have finished your research, and was it worth doing? Do you believe in academia still?
Yes.
That's a good question.
I'm still actively involved in my country in the area of cancer research, using radiation for developing more effective ways to treat cancer, and to look at fundamental level how we deal with the cancer cell, which is radio resistant, which is chemo resistant, how to win over, how to overcome the resistance of the cancer cell. Our goal of research is, in one line, to selectively kill cancer cell in the body and spare normal cell. So our research focuses around selectively killing. We call it targeted killing of cancer cell. I remain quite involved. Between yesterday and today, I have delivered 3 lectures in 3 conferences. So I feel still quite excited that I will be able to make contribution to understanding the basics of it. Sure. Thomas, I would like to just mention to you one sentence as a concluding remark, that if we become more powerful in knowledge, if we become more powerful in a particular field of science, peace will ensue. I believe that World War II, which lasted 6-7 years, ended with the power of atom. Otherwise, I'm afraid we may have been in war even today. We don't know. So it is a strength of knowledge, a strength of science that can bring peace on this earth. When people are hungry, they are not looking for anything else, but they are looking for something by which their hunger can be eliminated. Science alone can do it. So science has got very strong relationship with developing peace in the globe. Thank you.
Yeah. Right. Thank you again, Dr. Mishra. And you raised so many questions. I think we'll come back to them next time. We're running out of time now, but I do want to find time to ask Annalise Adair to just share with us your reflections on your own academic achievement, and you know, how did your PhD, how might it influence peace thinking? I mean, you've been looking at the issue of gender and so on. Tell us a little bit about what you've been doing.
Hi, thank you everybody for having me. Yes, I am still an advocate of academia. I came into academia as a performer, so it was kind of a very big adjustment for me. But in terms of how my work with gender and mythology, so I have a degree now in mythological studies with an emphasis in Jungian depth psychology. So I'm really looking at belief systems and meaning-making processes. And so in terms of the very specific topic that I looked at, which is how negative meanings, negative narratives about menstruation in the West in particular have had a negative impact on women's psychologically and physically, how these negative narratives, have a not just impact us psychologically, but how the psychological then impacts the physical and how there's a dialectical relationship between that. And so I looked through the prism of this kind of sociological study, which is internalized oppression. And so internalized oppression is both perpetuated through belief and through practice. And these are the beliefs and the practices that are in constant dialogue between culture and the individual. So, I mean, this is so vast and so difficult to talk about in just a few minutes, but in terms of peace, I think that I always kind of go back to the individual, and through these concepts that Jung put forward of the unconscious and the conscious. And when we have these unconscious beliefs, for example, our insecurities, our shame, our beliefs of unworthiness, and especially when we're unconscious of them, it's really easy to project them out onto others, out onto the world, the earth, animals, plants, other communities, whatever, everything. And that is a process of dehumanization. And so I just keep going back to the individual. What can the individual do to make themselves aware and conscious of their own insecurities, of their own shame, and heal, create peace within the self, because I believe that creating peace within the self is then what will help to create peace within the larger community.
Gosh, well, thank you. That's a very succinct summary, Annalisa. I think you're going to have to do a longer presentation to us at another meeting.
Yes.
Annalisa and I are both involved with the Mary Magdalene Studies Association, and that's, and we've been looking at the psychology of gender as it plays out in group dynamics, in religions. Mary Magdalene was etched out of the early Gospels, the Christian story, the church structures, but she might have been a very important figure. There's some research being done by Libby Schrader, for instance, in America, that actually scholars scrubbed out her name even from the earliest manuscripts of the Gospels, because they were so shocked that Jesus would have had a female close disciple. So I think you've raised a very important thing at the ending of our meeting today about, if we're going to make peace on the planet, it has to include gender peace. We have to make peace between men and women, and also between, the principle of the female, the feminine, and the masculine. Some of you know I'm working on a tarot deck, which is an unusual thing, but of the gods, the male gods, because there's quite a lot of female goddess tarots you can get. I'm saying let's have a male one and try and make peace between the male and female archetypes, to use Jung's term. And I just want to end with a little story. I was yesterday working on the god Ahura Mazda, who's one of my favorite gods. He's the Iranian Zoroastrian god of absolute justice and truth. And you don't mess around with Ahura Mazda or it's the end of the world kind of thing. And I was researching this deity, in detail yesterday, all day. And I was researching the life of Cyrus the Great, who was the founder of the Persian Empire, if you've recalled his name. And I discovered that when Alexander the Great conquered Persia, he went to the tomb of Cyrus the Great to pay his respects, because although he was a Greek who had just defeated the Persian Empire, the Greeks respected Cyrus the Great. He was a great emperor, and he actually never invaded Greece. He was too clever for that. It was his son Darius that tried and failed. Anyway, Alexander goes to the tomb of Cyrus the Great in Iran, and it's still there. You know, he pays his respect. He found it had been robbed by tomb robbers, so he was very annoyed. He put a guard on it and he had it rebuilt. And then he went off to India and did his thing. And I thought, idly, well, that's interesting. I wonder if that tomb's still there. I'll just do some research on this. And I looked up the tomb and I discovered, yes, it is still there. It's in the mountains of Iran. It's a sacred site. And lo and behold, every year there's a Cyrus the Great National Festival Day, in which local people go to the tomb and take flowers and incense and roses and have a little party in honor of Cyrus the Great, 2,500 years after his death. And it was yesterday, the day that I was doing the research on Ahura Mazda, was the same day as they were meeting at this tomb in Iran. Now that's what Jung called a synchronicity. Like, I haven't been researching Cyrus the Great for about 10 years. And then finally I look him up on his day in Iran. So I took that as a good sign, a synchronicity that, you know, the Tower of the Gods is a worthwhile project. And we do need to make peace, not only between physical men and women, but between the archetypes of the gods, the deities that haunt the imagination of mankind. So, you know, anyway, just a little bit of a little story about synchronicity. So look, I want to thank everybody. Gevork, did you have a final comment you wanted to make? I think you had a little footnote to add.
Yes, Thomas, thank you. I want to say thank you, Mrs. Anwar, for her suggestions. She said that this is a global problem, global issue, the relations between Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Turkey. And I'm thinking that really, I agree with this, and I'm thinking that it will be very good to start constructive discussions among Armenians, Turkish, and Azeris intellectuals. Constructive discussions to find out the truth that is one only. We cannot have two or several truths. So thank you for that. And also, I think that it will be very good to have an intellectual from Azerbaijan to make suggestions on our draft that I presented today. And maybe other colleagues also can make the suggestions, and we can accept it during the next meeting. What do you think, Thomas?
Yeah, I think that's it. I will send the document to everyone that's been on this call today, and if colleagues want to make, you know, improvements, I mean, I want it to be as fair as possible, and also just to make plain that what we as the World Intellectual Forum and the Institute of Peace Studies can offer is not to do with politics. We're not, you know, and not to discuss military and all this stuff. This is a cultural, intellectual, and indeed spiritual mediation discussion, because no other groups in the world look at the spiritual dynamics of peacemaking. I mean, which I think is shocking and ridiculous. But the UN system is entirely doesn't talk about it. The EU hardly talks about it. The British government doesn't talk about it. So that spiritual dimension, I think, is what is our mission. And to me, as far as I can say, I've read all the holy texts of humanity. They all want peace. So why don't we start rereading them and actualizing that?
I have one concern, and Mrs. Anwer perhaps knows very well that during the last 30 years, several projects were joint projects with Armenian and Azerbaijan NGOs. And after these projects, these Azerbaijani NGOs were repressed by the government. So this is really a real concern because the situation with the civil society in Azerbaijan remains the same. So, but I'm I'm ready, and I will be happy to for such discussions, for such initiation. Thank you.
Okay.
I just like to say thank you to Mr. Manoukian. Just also, I think to have a personal explanation. My eyes, this left eye has an issue. Eye water is torn apart, so something is flying. So I usually don't wear eyeglasses except the sun. I had some, but therefore from now on, maybe I may not have to wear more often, just as a general information. And I'm not aware of the NGOs in Azerbaijan, but one thing I'm aware of it. One thing is also maybe, Thomas, that might be or should be another important discussion to bring on the table, which is I've been very concerned that secularism and separation of powers have been pushed, including you. And I made this as a statement at the UN panel conference room for, I think, 3 years or 2 or 3 years ago. So the secularism, because once I respect all religions, but when we look at all the fundamentalists, they claim they are the only one and they want to make all world the same or fight with them as Bush did. So I think religion and science and religion, as Arthur C. Clarke once stated, so the time is now science and religion should work hand in hand. That is the missing point, the missing link. And also, how can we really, the religion, spiritual point, I agree, but then even within Turkey, it's been polarized, divided. I mean, this is not alone the Turkey issue or Azerbaijan or Armenia, but the whole world. When you look, take it any country, Brazil or any country, and even though it seems like they are there is an active war going on or a conflict going on, look at each and every country last 20 years, how it becomes worse than. We hope, to have more free, more democratic, and what had happened is emptied, and then just we are dealing with the wars, but the power, even education institution, when we talk about academician and science, who fund them? So that defines what they say or what the outcome of their project. So secularism also needs to be bring on the discussion. This is my request. Thank you.
Right. Well, that's part of the agenda for next time. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Also, just to say that I want to just say that the UN often talks about multilateralism. Nowadays, you get up in the UN, and if you're a head of a world country, you always say, we believe in multilateralism. But I don't think intellectuals are given enough attention to what actually they mean by multilateralism. It's become the new buzzword for everything that's right. And then the opposite is intended or implied monolateralism. Now, this was a sort of coded word for being against anyone that has one solution they're going to impose on everyone else. So the idea of multilateralism is we work together, we come up with collective solutions, which is great. But I just think the UN is being sloppy in its intellectual work at the moment. It's adopted this buzzword sort of in the last 10 years, really. But it's never really subjected it to analysis. So I give everyone some homework before our meeting next month. Can you find any research papers, any studies by intellectuals in any language defining what multilateralism is? And, you know, like, why is it the only, I mean, it's weird, isn't it? Multilateralism has now become the monolateralism of UN speak. It's if you get up and say, I don't agree with multilateralism, you'll be shot by the security guards. So I think we have a duty as the World Intellectual Forum to look at these things critically. And so anyway, and my final point, and I promised we're going to end because it's late and everyone's done their homework this week, is Cyrus the Great. Sorry to go on about him, but it was his day yesterday and he's my new hero. His policy on religions was very important. He was an exponent of religious toleration, dare I call it multilateralism. And in the Persian Empire that he created, although he personally worshipped Ahura Mazda, the god of light and truth, he let every province follow its own religion and they would have their own gods. And he adopted this policy in relation to the Hebrews who were in exile in Babylon. He set them free to go back to Jerusalem, and he gave them help and support to create their temple to Yahweh. And that was his policy of religious toleration. He said, fine, you worship Yahweh, you know, but everyone else was free to worship their gods as well, because he felt, well, they're all under Ahura Mazda anyway, so there's no conflict here. I just share that as a closing summary. In a sense, you know, if only Cyrus the Great's toleration prevailed in today's world, we wouldn't have the problems we're facing. So anyway, thank you again, everyone, for coming, and for all that have contributed. Mohammed, for speaking with us from Afghanistan. Your testimony was very moving. And we will keep in touch. And we'll do what we can to solve the problems of gender conflict as well as regional conflicts, like in the Azeri-Armenian problem. Okay, so blessings to everyone. Thank you. And we'll
Mr. Thomas, can I?
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
If you don't mind, can I just say? Can I have just 2 minutes just to say about our friend from our friend from Turkey. So I would like to just say that this platform by Mr. Thomas, it's really a very good platform. That platform actually provides us access that to bring and discuss those issues are present in our countries or even in the region or in the world. So we are here to discuss these issues and to give our opinion and find solution for those problems. Like our friend from Armenia, he raised questions. He has the right to discuss the issues that he has in his country, and from has the right to answer those questions if those questions are directed to her or country. But I think it would be a more suitable, or if there would a friend from Azerbaijan to defend that questions arise by our friend from Armenia. But finally, I would like to just this is a platform that provides us a space to discuss the issues that need the concerns, and we are here not for the politics but for the solution. Especially, like to just say about myself, I'm to discuss the issues that we are country. And I'm looking to all of you that come out with the solutions and at least to guide us, guide me, or at least give us your opinion how to work for peace and peace building in my country. Thank you.
Right. Well, thank you, Mohammed Shoaib. We will all be in touch. And yeah, you know, these situations are grave in your country. And okay, so let's keep going, people. And peace is the name of the project that we're working on, each from our own special fields. And you know, this has been recorded. We will put it on our channel. You can share this talk with colleagues. And you know, next month rather, I do hope we have someone from Azerbaijani's intellectual community to also join in. Right, okay, blessings, shalom, salam, and mir.
Yeah.